welcome back. You thought I will not make it. No, no, no. It's time for the mind. So you saw the first trick that the mind does. So this first trick is really anticipating something and then seeing, okay, what is the time? Why it's not happening this 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 time? And it goes and goes and goes. And it clicks. Okay, for sure, there is something bad happening. When in fact, it's just the technology. So today, I want to take you on a bit different journey than yesterday. So yesterday, we spoke about our physical aspect. So our really the core of our existence is vehicle that we have, maybe not really the core, the physical aspect, the framework, the frame that we are living in, but yesterday was about this building blocks. So these elements that are being moved, that function. And right now, I want to go a bit further. Yesterday, we spoke about things like senses, things like breathing, things like health, like immunity system. All those things, they function, some of them dependently, some of them independently, some of them are sources of signals, some of them are already working on their own behind the scenes, so in subconscious mode. And today we are going to explore what has been put on top of that mechanism, really to manage how it is working. So today, what I want to do is to take you on this mental aspect of what is this vehicle, this human vehicle. Mental aspect, but mental aspect, sometimes it's confused only with your logical brain that really is seeing all those things, is hearing all those things, and smelling, tasting, getting all those signals about time, about temperature, about vibrations. You can feel the vibrations as well. It smells things, it touches things. So this ultimate element has not only one aspect, this conscious aspect that you have, that you use on daily basis to just process those things that are happening. It has another aspect, which sometimes is more important, which basically is how it works. So it has two parts. I will start with the first one, which is about the mental body. And what I want to talk about in here, in this mental body, is that this is called as well the subconscious mind. And subconscious mind is the mind that does all those processings for you and is ultimately the one that functions behind the scenes. So why we are talking about this subconscious mind, what it brings, is it good or bad? Does it do good things, bad things, any things, how deep it goes? So for me, just to give you a bit of story, because we are already jumping into really what is it, how it works, and my discovery of how the mind works, how it processes things, how it digests the information. It's a long, long journey already. So what I hinted previously is that I was fascinated with scientific American mind, the books about mind, about the things about physical aspect, about the neural network that we have in our brains that is processing this whole stuff, about parts of the brain and most of their functions, but from the perspective of curious researcher that starts to think, okay, those are physical aspects, they are placed here, here, somewhere in the middle as well. They are usually in two, but sometimes there are elements, or there is element that is only one in the brain. But this whole brain, I was so curious to discover not only the physical aspects, how it works, because that is as well a very interesting topic, how mechanically this whole construction works. But I was as well interested in how it is possible to influence how it perceives what is happening. Because when I started to observe myself, for a long, long time, I saw at least a couple of scenarios. One of the scenarios, it was after I really went deeply into really thinking about going into certain relationship. And the problem was that it was distant one. So like right now you have Zoom, in the times that this situation happened, there were only these communicators because the internet speeds were not that high really to process the video. So this all happened when text was the preferred way of communicating, already interactive, not necessarily email in, email out, things like this, but text as this vehicle that was really used for communication. The problem was that in this relationship, the initial meeting happened, the brain imprinted already the initial situation, attached some emotions, some feelings, some elements that were beautiful because it was pure heart from my side, and as well looking for really someone that can that I can resonate with. But there were a couple of things that really guided this situation into a situation where this whole image of other person was just the image that mind was seeing through the senses, and mostly by the senses. Some feelings already attached, so some unfulfilled yet needs maybe, but it was mainly focusing on the physical aspect. So how the brain worked back then is that while the relationship, which you can call a relationship, it was mainly the brain processing the information from the past on and building on top of this situation another emotions, more and more unfulfilled emotions that were as well fueled by the communication that happened, the communication that was processed by the brain in certain way that fit the already the image that was over painted, if you can say it like this, by the brain. So the brain started to build the idealistic version of the situation, whereas the situation really was just a simple situation of one being really wanting to progress with that situation, second one, not that really. So I've been lots of emotions. I've landed in the hospital as well because of the situation in neurology, just because I was so down in certain moment that I'm doing everything possible. I'm really out of the heart. I'm delivering the max aspect of myself back then, but the situation is not progressing, and I'm going down and down and down with seeing that with all my heart, I cannot really deliver anything that would satisfy the other side. And I was basing mainly on the text communication, so mainly on those aspects of the brain that are already building the picture of the world on those senses that the brain, the mind, the logical mind has. What as well was interesting is that it already after some time, because it lasted, it's after some time, this became a habit. For some say that for something to become habit, you have to process this same type of information for around 30 days, and it might become a habit for you. So back then as well, this became like a habitual situation where I was going down and down and down and down. And then I was so down, I started really to doubt that God guides me in the good way. I started to question why I am so really down, so low on energy, so frustrated really because of the situation, why God gives me so many hurdles on the road of pure heart road. But after going back, I saw it. And I saw that this whole situation is basing on how the logical mind analyzes those things. Because analyzing those things not only on the level of what was happening in this very moment, but it was taking the ideal memory that it imprinted already in the mind, and it used that one to put even more of the elements around it and give me this picture, and give me as well the sense of unfulfillment, the sense of that I'm not enough for this situation, but I didn't hear the heart back then. So as well, those subconscious elements, they were present in this very moment. So you see in here the subconscious element that we already talked about is one of those things that as well reinforce what is happening on daily basis. And it works on multiple levels. It not only works on the pure data about certain situations that you see that will happen, because it gets the situation, it takes the picture here, and just loads this one into memory. As well, we discussed that the whole body is really the memory of our human being. It's not only mind. They say that the kidneys are the kidneys, the gut is the second mind, as well the heart as well. those are areas that the information is stored, but in yogi culture, this information is said to be stored in not only there, it's said to be stored all over your body. So what is interesting is that this subconscious mind as well plays the role not only in those, so taking a situation, imprinting subconscious. Conscious downloads this, so the intellect, the logical mind, downloads this information, as you see in here, for the intellect, but as well, the subconscious takes what the conscious gave and processes it and stores it. Then conscious sees it again, it checks what is in database and already assesses the situation, judges the situation, as well you can tell it like this, and verifies what was the previous response. Right now it gives the same response again. If something changed, it adapts the weights over the neural network in the brain, because as well, it's quite interesting what AI currently does is it bases on this aspect of our brains on the neural network and like a feedback loop. So if you have some pattern, it's pushed to the neural network. This neural network gets the current pattern. Sometimes it has the initial pattern of results. It gets trained, and then those weights are amended where there are some changes in the pattern, small changes as well. And some of the elements of neural network, they are adapted with weights. So which ones are more important? And it's important that you receive the final result that is the same. So like doing the OCR of the images, so getting the text out of the images and then translating it to textual form. This works most of the time on the neural network aspect, and similar situation happens here. So the brain takes what you have and pushes it to your neural network that processes it and then stores it in your subconscious mind, which then has some adaptations of the response. So really, if you develop some of the patterns that you have, it might be quite difficult for you to change this aspect of yourself. And this is so important to know as well, because this develops not only patterns in your brain, but it develops as well the habits for you. So developing patterns and habits is really something that then works behind the scenes. So for you, it is quite important to know that you are not only having this human brain as the source of input, but it already has some patterns in the back of the head that say, okay, this situation happens in this way, this situation happens in that way. And that is so important as well to notice that this brain, we will talk about the we in a moment, but this brain processes the situation, and the brain is one of the, it is the, let's say, most powerful element that we have, and it's most noisy element that we have as well. So it processes this information, and basing on that, it as well assigns reaction. So, and most of the times, it it is in a danger-seeking, threat-seeking mode. So it identifies if the situation has kind of unknown slash dangerous output possible, because in the past we recognized it as the dangerous one, then it already highlights that one, starts to doubt that you should interact with the situation, and either starts to negotiate with the initial thought that happens, or really starts to push those buttons that it has available. So the buttons in terms of hormones, the stress ones, the adrenaline. So it might launch really the like a run response for you in a situation that not necessarily is in line with any physical threats that are in there for you. So this is interesting aspect about the mind itself as well, is because it works on patterns. And it's not that easy to really convert those patterns that you have, because those patterns, they start to appear from when you are a child. So lots of psychologists when really hunting for the patterns, they go back as early as your childhood to the first occurrence of something, and then they work on the situation really to highlight that one closely and ask yourself what really happened, what was really bad in this situation. And that is so interesting aspect of this, that really you might say that this build around patterns in the brain it's what's prohibiting us, what's blocking us from really reaching out the next goals of where we are, of who we want to be, how we want to grow. There is whole movement of self-development around just really talking about how to re-enable ourselves to judge the situations in fair terms, not really prejudice terms, not really the terms that tell you it's good or bad. Definitely. It's about really asking the mind in any situation that happens, what worse can happen in this situation. Because if mind gets questions, it pauses. And once the re-verification system and gets the picture that might not only be put by the mind, but it can pop in what we will discover tomorrow. But this is how mind works. And there are some techniques as well. There are some known people that talk about it. Tony Robbins is one of the best right now, really, to talk about this aspect of ourselves, about really how he developed on his path to really work on the mind aspect, how really he worked on the path to distract the mind and really use as well those techniques that mind uses on the mind itself to really break those patterns, to ask questions, to make the mind pause and then ask really directly what is the cause and make the mind aware what is the real response there. So this is one of the aspects of mind that really drives you into different situations. And there are some techniques, what I mentioned, the NLP, neuro-linguistic programming technique, which basically works on how the words, how combinations of words can work on how your brain reacts, on sublayering some emotions, or really unconsciously building some patterns, some elements that the brain will need to reassess to really get the better answer or really remove the blockage. But this is one of those aspects. So observing the mind and really being in the presence of the mind, but really not only focusing on the whole world from the mind perspective, is something that usually is much better way to really understand the mind. So observing the mind, you would ask, how with my mind I can observe my mind? So I will tell you how I came to that observation and what happened then, because you see, for a long time, I was asking myself why I react automatically with fear or anger to some situations. Why I cannot control these situations. Why I cannot respond consciously, respond really from distance to get the proper reaction. And my observations were ongoing, and I had amazing coach that really asked me or suggested something that I should start to practice as often as I can, or as often as I become aware of the situation. I should start to observe the brain and really link the situation to really observe why there is anger, or really at least on the very beginning, see that the anger starts to grow. See that the brain starts to develop this anger more and more, starts to grow as well. All those other aspects that fuel the anger, the cortisol, the adrenaline, it uses at least a couple of chemicals that can influence the situation, and then you become more and more frustrated. But about the anger, it was really bothering me because I didn't want to be, in anger. I didn't want to be angry at those people that I love, and that for me was like a linking point. Okay, how I can grow on myself really to convince the brain that it should really not use this whole mechanism against myself, against itself. Because ultimately, after the whole situation, probably as for you as well, after the big fear, when we from distance observed that this fear really was nothing, it was just something that existed because the mind was fueled to see it like this. The mind was influenced from external sources by things like propaganda, things like really working on these NLP aspects of our mind that are really receptive to certain words, that are receptive for repeated statements as often as possible, to just build in this automatic communicate that pops in. And what developed further was as well, I started to have those perspectives when I saw it, and in some of those, I started really to control those, to see and exchange those. One of the aspects that you can build is that for those situations, it's as well what Tony Robbins advises is that you should practice as well. If you have problem with that, you should practice just growing the anger on something that you know causes you anger, and on the very maximal level, you just have to push totally different emotion, like full happiness on the very end in the anger situation, because this is something that really works on the core of those angers, core of those fears, because then you make your brain, your mind, you cause the distraction, because like it's like, you know, you have blue screens. It's kind of this situation in here, because your mind has the pattern broken. It's like in a lock for a second, and that's very good, because then it starts to really reprocess the information. So that was one of those aspects that I observed that were one of the critical elements in here, but there are some other aspects as well. This propaganda information, the disinformation that is currently so available, so present, it's as well hard to say how to filter this type of information so that our minds don't get it in conscious way or subconscious way, because some of this information is passed in conscious way, some of this information is passed in subconscious way, and mind processes all of that visually, by hearing, by visually and hearing. It's most of the processing visually the most, and if you connect both and you add some emotions to that process, then you receive the package that gets easily imprinted already with the emotional, this is bad situation. I will not make it, I will be dead in no time, and so on and so forth, because mind is always seeking for the things that can kill it. And this is this aspect, it's called survival brain, mammal brain, or this, there are as well different names for this type of brain. It's as well the subconscious part, but this aspect that is in there to protect us in those situations that would usually kill us when we live in cages. But right now we are not living in cages, and this is as well quite important to see that there are lots of aspects of how the mind is constructed that probably don't work anymore in the current times. Like this situation, for some of you, probably recording yourself, going live, doing anything that will expose you publicly causes already, maybe not the pain of whole body, but you already see the situation as totally critical, as the situation that you shouldn't do. You already have lots of judgments happening around you, lots of things that will say, okay, starting from the way I look, it's already bad. Always you will see and watch yourself as really not fit for what you are doing in front of the camera. Already you will start judging yourself. If you see yourself in the mirror, you will say that this, and this aspect is not the way it should be, so I will do it when I would have more time, or I will be better prepared. Already you saw this situation probably in your life, that your mind always seeks for the good explanation, usually seeks for the explanation that will keep you in your safe zone, called as well comfort zone, the situation that is known for you. So like for me, for some time, it was waking up early, and that is still challenging, but I have a plan as well, and that as well needs some really going to sleep earlier type of situations. But getting up early, if you observe, the first answer is that the alarm clock starts to ring, then you see it, you almost are up, but the mind starts to say, oh, what hour it is, let me sleep just 20 minutes more, just something more, you don't need to do it right now, you can wait, things like this, and you go back to sleep. And you wake up after 1 hour and 30 minutes, 3 hours, or maybe sometime 20 minutes really, because it works as well on those cycles as well that happen during the sleep. So for the sleep, we as well have the sleeping cycles thanks to that, thanks to really not being able to wake up at certain hour, I started really to check what sleeping techniques I can use for really getting up, being fresh, being really regenerated, because the sleeping is really important as well for your mind. Really some cleanups, the sleep as well, the deep sleep, it is really regenerating, not only for this physical form, but a bit more, which we might talk about tomorrow. But those are as well aspects of the sleep that will let you try to really work on your sleeping patterns. So that is as well what I discovered. As well, what I discovered is that basically there are some things like golden hours for sleeping between 9 and 12, which as well is a question mark. But usually they are the times where most of the critical organs get regenerated. So that's important. But moving away from this digestion about this digression, and it brings back really to how the mind already starts to work on what is this your initial thought, and this is what we will touch on tomorrow, because those elements that the mind works to process, they are something more than just things that pop in. And this package I leave for tomorrow, because this package, from my perspective and from where I want to take you, will be most important. But I wanted to show you a couple of elements that our minds are using for really just giving us these automatic answers, moving us into certain patterns, looking at the world from the sensory perspective only. Because what is said, what we are reminded is that really the mind, the logical mind, the subconscious mind, they are really the tools. They shouldn't be used as really the keys to view this world. We are human body, human mind, but driven by something more. We are human body, human mind, driven by soul. And quite often, this aspect is missed because if you see things like universities, what they are teaching, are they teaching about your spiritual aspects? That for some of you already you are conscious that there is a bit more that works behind the scenes, not only the things that you are moving, not only the things that are happening inside of you, that you don't have really the conscious control on how everything happens, how your cells process the oxygen that they receive, how you are breathing in and out, how you are moving those hands, how you are shaking your head, how you are stretching, how you are moving, how you are running. Some of those, they are already trained elements, but they happen. You have the thought, but who put the thought in your head? Who is the you that works on everything that happens? But that is for tomorrow. For today, as well, I wanted to highlight some aspects as well of this logical mind that really are currently abused to the degree that I already mentioned, because we are quite often not learned about spirituality. We are learned, we have religions, lots of us are following one of the big religions. I'm Catholic as well. I grown on this base, and I asked some further questions to go further to spirituality. But most of us, besides being really in religion, they have been trained in mostly the logical aspect of the mind. In schools, most of the things that are being taught, they are around really developing the patterns in the mind. They are around memorizing things, around not using this creative thinking of mind, because it's as well where all those locations are, because on the left part you have this mostly logical part that is being overdeveloped by the current processing, by the current studies, where your right side, that is creative one, that is connected to your heart, is really underdeveloped. And for lots of the things, like even speed reading, for speed reading, if you start to speed reading from the right side, the creative side, when you start to see the pictures, when you start to process the information this way, you can land in the Guinness record book for fastest reader. And that's what being highlighted in most of the books around this topic, that to start using the right side of the brain as well, so the creative side, you start to really process everything faster. Why? We are not trained to use both elements. We are only used to overuse this logical element of the mind. Why we are not trained to use the creative one as well and really not be afraid of using the creative side of us. So this is as well quite important aspect because this is your whole intellect. And if you develop in the childhood the process that you should only logically approach things, you don't have space for really growing over those patterns that your parents, your grandparents, your grandparents had, and they worked for them to some degree. You might land in a situation that in this environment that is constantly changing, you are using the old patterns that don't work anymore. It's either in terms of how you really show the world your kids, how really you interact with them, how really you let them use their creative aspects, how much you enable them to grow the real path that they should follow, not necessarily only the path that will bring the best resources, best money, best paid job, that the job that is usually the one in pattern, like corporations, like accountancy, like consultants, like those type of elements that will give them the secure location, quite okay pay, but they don't have to use the creative side. Why most of us are trained to really stay in the zone of focusing on academical knowledge and only to use it in corporate environment rather than really creating the business of your own and really being motivated on permanent basis by running this business, by pushing all your resources, by pushing your focus on something that you will build. And why focus? Because one of the most important aspects of how your brain works, how you work as human being, is this focus that you give. So already in terms of physics, in terms of metaphysics, in terms of quantum physics, which is a way of translating the metaphysical elements into quasi-physical elements that can be known somehow by the mind, can be logically digested by the mind, is that the key aspect that you give to your life with your mind is your focus, because mind is like as well observing, but it's observing with a focus. So if you focus on something, it already starts to process. It's like really the CPU that gets the information, then there is a background operating system that processes the information, and there is a program on top that really does the interface for everything. So it works kind of like this, but if you give focus in terms of what the mind has, it already starts to processing. And even in metaphysical and physical aspect and quantum physics aspect, even it is said that things materialize when you really put your consciousness on those. And it's not only by seeing, it's as well of focusing your thoughts on something. So if you start focusing on negative aspects, they are being brought closer because this focused energy gets them and drags them here because it thinks, okay, it's interesting, get me more, get me more, get me more. On the other hand, you have opportunity to look at those opportunities that can happen, and then you say, okay, give me more of this, give me more of this. It's connected with this survival brain aspect and the creative brain aspect. So the survival aspect and creative brain / heart aspect is really those things that are being like a constant, maybe not the battlefield because it's not battlefield, but they are constantly they compete for your focus and for your choice. So either you have choice of the threats that are happening and focusing on those threats, or you have choice of opportunities that might happen, and you have conscious choice of really focusing your mind on developing those possible positive outcomes of those situations or showing you really what possible aspects can happen. So that is as well one of the key aspects in here, and it's one of the key aspects of us as human beings and using our capabilities is that really it's as well what Tony Robbins initially mentioned is where your focus goes, energy flows, because it's not only when you focus with your senses, it's when you focus with your whole self. So what can be done about this? How the mind can be trained as well to really see that it's not really the best driver for all your situations. And already I had a couple of friends that started to practice this way, that really just questioning the mind and thinking about, you might have intuition, you might have heart guidance that gives you some type of information that initially pops in. And then you see that there starts an analysis, usually with a small delay. So then you can see that, okay, something popped in a raw form, pure form, and mind just picked it up and started to analyze it. When you start to see this analysis, then you will start to see as well what happened initially. What was this pure form that popped in? What we will talk about tomorrow. But today, it's about really discovering how your mind is running the show right now and how your mind prefers to be an actor, not the producer of the situations. Have you already noticed in your environment how often you prefer to really stick to the known situation, stick to the known process, rather than creating the new process for the certain thing, even things as simple as going to your work, if you work nearby, or going to certain location, you choose the same path, although you have multiple ones that can guide you there. Have you discovered already how the mind is used to really following the same pattern again and again? The question is, would you let your logical mind drive what you are doing? Or are you curious enough, or you have enough courage right now go level above. So to start, see that there is this creative mind. To start to see really that mind already, that the logical mind already gave you the patterns for most of the things. Like I had as well some situations in trading. I was playing with trading on the stock markets, on the indexes specifically, for saying well, they will go up, they will go down. And I saw really how the mind really wants to process the certain information to its advantage, always. So there was a signal, always there was a thought, for sure it will go this way. No, the intuition just stayed from time to time. It was, I could feel the intuition, which said, no, 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 no. But mind already started to negotiate for sure this time, for sure this time, for sure this time. So this is what I want to bring as well, that mind is good thing, not necessarily the thing that will give you the outlook of how to be creative, how really to enable yourself to live all those aspects that you can reach here on earth by going out of the comfort zone. And by meaning of this, going out of the comfort zone is going out of the patterns that you have established over the time, the patterns with your family, the patterns with your father, with your mother, with all those relatives that influenced you to some degree. And by influencing, they created the pattern that your mind wants to play over and over and over again, because it has been trained to respond in this way. And it already starts to judge itself when it's not responding as well this way as it has been trained. So that is lots of things about the mind that you can say how it works, and lots of things that are in there for the purpose. So mind is wonderful too. We as human beings are wonderful mechanism that has been put here on earth really to experience, and mind gives us one of the aspects of those experiences that we can develop even more. But mind itself should not control your life. Mind itself should not control how you go about the situations, how you already, while having interesting idea, start to judge it down and really focus on the negative elements rather than focusing on the positive elements that all of us have. And those opportunities that usually, if you go out of this focus on threats, they usually start to happen. If you go into this creative side, everything starts to be put in front of you. All the resources that you need, things in development, and some unknown situations, some unknown feelings start to happen when you enable yourself to go out of this world that is guided only by your mind. Your mind works on you to keep you really on this physical aspect, keep you as well in the zone of like about money. Yeah, I will not have money if I don't have job. The same and the same and same. Lots of businessmen, the billionaires, they don't work in corporations. They create those corporations. I'm talking about billionaires, not in the aspect of really, this is impressive. We should really praise them. We should really say that they are wonderful. It's not this aspect. The money aspect as well is the aspect that is really like some kind of template that has been established as well by saying that money is bad. the basic aspect of that is money is energy that you receive, and this energy you can really consume on the things, either the physical things, or you can consume on development, or you can really push this farther to some people that need this type of energy, so you can help others as well. You can use those resources to grow yourself. You can use those resources to grow your family. You can use those resources to really enable your kids to have opportunities. So we should refocus our minds to really pursue the opportunities and pop in all those things it thinks is beneficial for our self-development, rather than leave the mind on the track of really focusing on the fears, focusing on realizing the negative patterns. It's as well, I had lots of these situations. I was working in corporate environment for a long time. Then I created as well the company, but I was still working as consultant. Right now, I'm still working as an employee, but I have different mission right now. I'm creating something right now that is in there really to help all of us, driven by the physical aspect, to get to know how we work, and the mental aspect, really go into the direction of spirituality, which is totally different language, totally different way of functioning, totally different tools that you receive in there. So for this aspect, for the mental aspect, it's so interesting because as well, your mind, your brain, your logical mind, your subconscious mind, your creative mind, it's beautiful creation. It's a tool. It's still a tool. It's like you have an engine in a car. It runs the car quite properly. Around this engine, you have, right now, you have really the onboard computer that drives most of the things, gets data from sensors, things like this, but you have the driver. And mind should not definitely be the driver to have the fulfillment of your life, because mind will just push the patterns on you of the things that you already digested, the things that happened, and it will not try to pop in with something new, with new experience, because it looks for the safety. It does not enable you to go farther into really feeling the sense of adventure, feeling that the life is so beautiful that we should let ourselves grow in those aspects that our intuition guides us, and just shut down those judgments from the mind that starts to happen. It's like travel somewhere. You feel that you should travel somewhere. You already received the information, what might be the obstacles, what keeps you in this place, and that you should leave it or you would leave it. When on the other side, how many times have you found something, you took a decision, and you had wonderful experience while going with that decision? We, with my wife, we had opportunity to visit the wonderful island of Cuba some time ago. And what was so special was that we observe that those people that don't have that much resources, the fuel is so expensive for them. They $10, $100, it's a lot in there. But they, after the end job, they are really happy. They are outgoing. They like to talk. They like the joy of life. They like to show how it is nice to be around with others. They dance a lot. They cheer a lot. They have totally different mindset than anywhere else. I saw similar aspect in India with great colleagues that I had or I still have in India, which as well brings, how much joy you can have from living your life. But they focus on this joy. They don't focus on misery, they focus on joy. And their mind is engaged and starts to think about what elements of joy you had or you are going to have, or really to deeply feel those elements rather than focus on that this event happens, but tomorrow it will this happen, this. No, go with where your mind guides you in these positive aspects. Mind can work for you as well. You have to convince your mind that it has to look for those positive elements. It's in there for you, and you are the driver. You are choosing what it should focus on, one or the other, negative or positive. So just use this tool to the best of its capabilities, and remember that this tool is not the ultimate tool that you have. This is the tool. It's just the tool. Start to be conscious that your mind is just the tool. Your mind that has observes the feelings and the mind that reacts automatically, judges patterns automatically. All those situations bring back memories, bring back this already this limiting beliefs that have been built in. All those stuff. It really is a tool that you should use consciously. And super consciously is totally different topic. And I think that this is the best moment as well to tell you that your mind, being in your mind, is just part of your journey. We started with hero's journey, human hero's journey. Your mind usually is in the struggle section. If you base your life on the mind only, it's in the struggle section. And you discover that your mind is not the way that you should perceive life. You already have this enlightenment situation where you discover, okay, I have this wonderful tool, but it is just a tool. And you discovered already that. Or are you ready to discover how you can go farther beyond these limits that perceiving the life only through your mind gives? Are you ready to reach the next level of you? Are you ready to discover your true self? Are you ready to follow something that is so unfamiliar for all of us. Are you ready to discover something more than you thought? What I'm thinking about is probably you guessed. It's invitation for tomorrow. It's invitation to see the spirituality, but to see the spirituality outside the religions. What exists beyond religion. And why? Religion is the one of the best drivers. I hesitated because I was going to say is the best, but it's one of the best drivers. Sometimes it's not needed for some, sometimes it's on path of some to really reach the religion, but reach the teachers, the core figures in religion that taught and taught most of the time with the same aspects of us as human beings. So thank you for today, and thank you for being a great spectator of this transfer, not only from my mind to your mind, as well transfer that appeared somewhere else. They need to pass this information happen somewhere else. And I'm so thankful for being your guide on this path. And I'm so thankful that you joined tomorrow.